I'm going to call the July 26, 2023 regular Board of Public Works meeting to order. So first thing, we can stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So the entire board is present, Earl Webb, Preston Lee, Richard Nichols, and Barbara Curtis, and myself. Anyone know where Andrew is? Or
Andrew called me. He's traveling today.
okay. So the mayor is not present. We have Austin Calaman, Robin Davis, and Mike Hoffman, our legal counsel. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to take item 7, Barbara, and we're going to move that to after the executive session so that we can have a discussion on some of the personnel issues beforehand. And then we'll take it up after. So we have the consent agenda. Have a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So record show 5-0. Receive the Inframark report. Jeff, stage is yours.
I think Mike's online.
Oh, is Mike?
He's joining us through Zoom.
Thank you, Mike.
Hey, Mike. Where is it?
Oh, afternoon, gentlemen.
Hey, Mike.
Mike,
So, regarding our report, the headworks, we replaced the lighting panel. Our electrician replaced the lighting panel and breakers in the headworks building. Moving on to the trains, we finished cleaning train 1 at the beginning of July, put it back into service. We are still seeing some higher TMPs there. We're going to do a recovery clean next week or the following week to see if we can knock it down. We changed out a transducer there, the level transducer, and that has to do with the calculation for the TMP. So I'm just going to verify with Xenon next week when I'm on site that that everything is programmed correctly.
So, because I saw in the Xenon Suez report, they were a little puzzled by why train 1, since it's a common header going to them, was different than the other ones. You have any insight, any idea on why?
For the TMP?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we don't understand. I mean, they were just clean, so it should have dropped out. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna do a recovery clean, and hopefully that adjusts it. But we're also going to check the transducer. I'm not sure what you mean about the common header. Was it the newest report they sent out?
I thought I saw that in the last one you forwarded me, Austin.
I'll have to get back to you on that, Tom.
All right, no, and it's just, I think it's a puzzlement to everyone because they didn't have an idea either.
Okay.
All right.
So we did have some issues we talked about last meeting with some VFDs. We have got those both straightened out. And then saw the email. I'm sure you saw the email about the issue with train 3. So when we put train 1 back online, the guys were eager to get it online before the 4th of July. And we got it online, and we had the new RAS VFD, and it appeared to be working properly, programmed properly. The SCADA showed it ramp up and down in percentage, but it was running at 100%. So you can transfer, instead of going through all the parameters individually in the VFD, you can transfer from one VFD to another, and it didn't take. And that was what the problem was. So train 1 RAS pump was running at 100%, and you couldn't tell that unless you actually went out and opened the cabinet and looked at the VFD, and saw it was running at 60 hertz, because on the SCADA it ramped up and down. So because it was running at 100%, train 3 RAS pump couldn't overcome the head, and therefore the mixed liquor went high on train 3. So when the guys ran the mixed liquor test on Wednesday, we run it. The mixed liquor for train 3 was elevated, and we traced it back to that was the issue. So we got the VFD program properly and got everything straightened out. And then we replaced the VFD for the process pump on train 1 also. And then we have one of the xenon blowers, the motor failed. We sent it to Hills. They said we were better off replacing it than trying to fix it. So we did receive that motor, and as of yesterday, it was installed. It just needed to be wired in. Do you have an update on that, Jeff?
Andy did get to that today.
Okay. So we're good to go with the trains. Everything's functioning properly. The guys finished up the plant measuring for the feeds to the main buildings. We didn't have time to get everything down on paper in a formal kind of report, but they found one issue, which isn't super serious, but it's a lead that goes from the garage, the maintenance garage in the main building there to the digester building. So we're gonna figure out what needs to be done there and work with Austin to get that addressed.
So I recognize that you said you don't have the reports done. So the cable installation was all within acceptable levels?
Jeff?
Wow.
Andy's working on a report with all the numbers that we got back from each cable. And we'll have that for you, but we got done. The one cable we found an issue with runs from the maintenance office over to the digester building. That one particular cable was not good.
Well, and that's very good, because I mean, I know I was kind of pushing that and
Yes.
out of fear, and it's good to be wrong.
So we had the numbers on all of those, and you'll be able to look at them and see what the resistance was on each cable going through.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest concern would be the process building with the xenon units, and that was good. So,
did the storm a couple of days ago have any negative impact? I realize it's not in this report, but any perspective on that? That was a lot of rain that we got very quickly.
The one yesterday or the one last week?
Well, I was like, go back as far as you want.
We had some I from it, but nothing like that handled. So, I mean, I think we had 1.25 inches yesterday. So in a very short period of time.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I think that was within an hour or so, hour and a half is what that happened in. So we had the flows came up, but it wasn't a problem.
Good.
all right. The guys are working on the new control panel at pump station 16. They're also installing a a junction box outside of the wet well. And then they'll get there's a bunch of junction connections within the wet well. They're gonna relocate all those connections into the junction box.
So for 16, we've kind of come to the point where our next step is to turn the pumps off and actually tie all the wiring in. So we're looking to do that tomorrow, as long as the weather outlook holds. Everything else is as far as we can go without shutting it down, but we want to start first thing to give us the most time to be able to get it done and back online.
You put a bypass on or no?
We're gonna have the small bypass. They're gonna have the Honda down there.
Because I know that station, I believe, is set up with a bypass.
We do have a bypass there. We're gonna have it there, and the guys, so we'll have 2 to 3 people down there, Andy doing wiring and getting assisted, and then we're gonna keep an eye on the levels and do the bypass if needed.
And I know we don't say it often enough, but I'm looking at the numbers again. I do this from time to time. Nitrogen, we can have an average of 8, we're at 1.7. Nitrogen load pounds, we can have 100 pounds, we're 5.78. Phosphorus, we can be at 25, we average 1.2. The numbers of that plant are absolutely incredible.
They are, it's a good plant. So, the GMB, Jeff was to meet GMB out at the plant this morning to go over the plans for the liquid sludge loading connection and the foam pump connection to the sludge wasting line.
Yeah, so GMB came out with Sprigg and Caswell this morning and looked at the hookup point for the county to haul liquid sludge, as well as the foam pump tie-in so that we could surface waste if we have another situation with the foaming as we had the past winter. So they came out, we're supposed to get the estimates back from them. The only modification on that, Mike, is they said that it's actually going to be cheaper to not use the abandoned line.
Okay,
Dewatering of the area just from the water table.
He's gonna, they're come up inside the
They're
building
gonna
and
come
then
up
exit.
inside the building
high.
about 3 foot
Yeah.
and then 3 foot below the surface, then come out from there.
okay, good deal.
I know we had a number of cracks that were fixed when we, took everything out. Any repercussions from that? Any new cracks that you've seen, any seepage or anything?
On the ditches, no.
Okay.
And then the last thing I have, starting in July, Clean Delaware started hauling liquid sludge to the county facility, so BPW is not being charged to haul it to Chester County, PA, so that's a good thing. And then once we get this sludge hookup station, I think Clean Delaware would just be used as a backup. Anybody have any questions additional on the report?
To make sure that the board understands is, and this is really GMB's court right now. The EQ tank has got fairly severe rusting on the upper edge, which is a stiffener for the tank. And well, severe corrosion isn't the proper term. You can see through it. So we're looking at what type of repair options and what other type of inspections we need to do. Because Austin, when was the last inspection? Was 2019, 2020?
I think it was 2020, right before the switch. That's when it was pumped down.
Yeah,
So-
that's correct, 2020.
2020. So we had the EQ tank manufacturer in and they looked at the tank. And at that point, they said, we were getting close to end of life. So we had started to look at plans to replace it. But, then COVID happened and the COVID buggies attacked the walls. No, that's a bad joke. But Charlie and Ben, I guess, are going to be evaluating what type of repair options and what other type of inspections we need to do.
Where is that? Around the rim, you say?
Oh, yeah. When you walk out of the building, out to that little observation, if you look down to your left, there's a section of it missing that is about that big.
How high is it above the water level? You think?
Oh, it's above the water. No, because it's the upper.
Oh, Okay, it's just to the rim itself.
Yeah, which is the stiffening rim for the top of the
Yeah,
tank.
yeah.
But I also will, raises questions as to what's the integrity of the rest of the tank now, because they were noting last time that the riveting was starting to be corroded. So,
From a GMP perspective, when will we have an update on that?
So I think there's two pieces to the puzzle. One is.
I'm surprised there's only two, but okay.
Yeah.
there's the
One
left
is
side and the right side.
the rim flange itself. Internally, I think with our structural engineers, we can review it and come up with our recommendations. As to the integrity of the rest of the tank, that really should be a tank specialist, like for Bjorkman's who we used the last time. So if that were the case, to get them on board, get you guys a proposal, get them to do the work and report would be a few months.
And that's combined, because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and Mike and Jeff can chime in, I believe you have to actually pump that tank down and clean it for them to do the internal inspection, which is, if I can remember, Mike, I think it's around 20,000, between 17 and 20,000.
Yeah, it was around 20, yeah.
So with that in mind, probably a good time would be after the peak season. Obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was, the bar screens were bypassed a bunch for different reasons prior to that, and that's why we had it cleaned a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, but the bar screens have all been online since that time. So we should be able to pump most of it out, and it should be less of a project.
Okay. So just give you updates.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Albert, you had something?
Yeah, just a question on the Veolia report. You refer to LEAP aeration distribution. What does LEAP stand for?
I'm not sure if it's an acronym, but it's when the membrane units were upgraded in 2019, 2020, they put in different air headers, and basically LEAP just puts more air to the membranes to help. It's like an air scour to help clean them. So we had when we had the issue with the high mixed liquors, and mixed liquors is solids concentration. So that's when we had the high mixed liquor for train 3, I asked Jeff to put the membranes in high LEAP because I didn't want the train 3 membranes to get sludged up, and sludge, like when you have real high mixed liquor in the basins, sometimes we call it sludging, but it gets this real thick clay-like sludge in between the membranes. So the air scour is supposed to knock that down. So I asked Jeff to turn it on the high LEAP, and then we just never took it back off. So it's just it was just getting more air. It doesn't hurt anything necessarily. It's just using more compressed air.
Yeah, so Barbara, there are air distribution headers underneath the filter trains and the air then rises and it agitates, and it helps to keep slough the material off the membranes. So it's part of the routine cyclic cleaning of the
I'm collecting a sheet of acronyms in it. I had that
and
on
LEAP
there.
is an acronym, but I cannot tell you what it stands for right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Not that I know 100% how it operates, but it stands for low energy aeration process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
That, Charlie.
That's
come on.
impressive.
Our technical expert on LEAP has just spoken. Any other questions for Inframark? In that case, Jeff, Mike, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
The president's report. So, Austin and I think Earl, you were there, we did a walk down with the new GMB representative of the wastewater treatment plant. This is what was something we used to do quarterly. And we've restarted it now that GMB's got their new person on board. And Charlie, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Mike Wilson, thank you. That part of the brain is gone. So we'll be doing that quarterly, and it's a general review of the operation of the plant, the paperwork, the lab, the whole thing. So it's an independent set of eyes to look at the plant. And Austin and I typically go on that, and Press sometimes joins.
Invited.
And we had a sub-quorum meeting with the city, including Earl, Austin, Andrew, Anne Marie, and Tim, to discuss the wastewater treatment plant options or where we're going to keep the city in the loop. I attended mayor and city council, and then we had a budget review with GMB to go over the projects that GMB has. And now we'll move on to Austin, the general manager's report.
All right, so Tim is working on finishing up the fiscal year audit. We're hoping to have that back to the board for the August board meeting. Teal continues construction in Donovan Smith. They're in Cooper Circle right now. So they're finishing up Cooper Circle, and then they're going to move over. I believe the well points are set for the entrance on Central Ave. We continue to apply for planning grants where we can find them. Robin, myself, Anne Marie, and Ellen Lorraine met to discuss capital project coordination, which was included in our discussion today on capital projects. We worked with GMB and submitted today a PFAS NOI for about $400,000. It's money out there for thinking ahead and working towards what we believe is going to be coming down the line as far as the regulations associated with the EPA. So we'll see how that goes. We also worked with the Coast Guard to try and
Excuse me, getting back to the other one. What's that all entail? What are they looking?
so
Funding additional testing, is that it?
it's goes in additional testing, monitoring wells, engineering. It doesn't include remediation. I feel like that's probably the next phase, meaning we would address, see where our benchmark would be, and then from there kind of gauge where we're going to go. So it's kind of the starting point, and there's a lot of money that was pushed down from the EPA to the state of Delaware, and so the state of Delaware is looking for interest from the municipalities and Tidewater and those others that would submit for any sort of money.
Great.
Would we do our own lab analysis, or do we use a certified lab?
We would use a certified lab. Yeah. Worked with the Coast Guard because we are trying to put some signs out where the existing water main crossing is. So we submitted an application and since kind of established that, we submitted the application, but they came back and said, if you're putting them on existing structures, as long as it meets the guidelines, that there's no issue. So we're working on trying to establish signs, and then Earl, Rob, and myself are going to try and go out there and mount them ourselves. So that should be interesting. Yeah. So we're going to work towards awarding the bid for M2. I got the contract documents that I need to take care of. We're working with Robert Kennedy on the water main crossing project and DelDOT. We've had extensive discussions with DelDOT. We're still looking for feedback from them on the placement of the water main, possibly in the railroad right of way and also at the crossing of the railroad right of way. And then one thing just to keep in the back of your mind, we were notified by, I guess it would be through DP&L, that as part of the coordination of the DelDOT Old Orchard realignment project, that they're looking at having right now, before we've had any discussions, 3 outages that would take the entire town out. It's our feed from Delmarva. There's going to be 3, and they're scheduled basically about 2 to 3 weeks apart, starting in the middle of September. So we have a call on Monday to try and understand exactly what that's going to entail, who from our staff's going to be in here, Inframark obviously coordinating with them. And then we're going to try and reach out, obviously, and pass along the most relevant information. So it's early to say that the day and time is going to be X. They gave us a preliminary date and time. The fear is that we blast that out to everybody and then it changes. They're looking to do it between 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. So we're just going to have to monitor it and pass along as much of the relevant information as we get. And then obviously we have to coordinate with our staff, and we will probably have staff in here during that in every department.
So just for everyone's information, from the past, originally when they came to us, it was going to be 1 8-hour outage for the whole project. And now it's 3 4-hour outages spaced every 2 weeks.
3 weeks on the first one, 2 weeks on the last 2.
And so we're meeting with, because I personally don't think it's TP&L driving this. It's DelDOT driving it more than likely, but we'll know more after Monday.
Yeah,
So there's 4 outages?
it's 3 outages, one in the middle of September, one the beginning of October, and one the middle of October to the late October.
Oh, I
And
thought you
it's-
said there were 3 4 hours.
3 4-hour
I
outage.
thought the timing between them, you had to give.
I may have said an
different
extra 2
times.
weeks.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's
Okay.
it's 3, and they're spaced. And what it is they're moving the 69 kV line that comes on the Midway substation. They have to relocate. I'm assuming 3 poles. I think they're scheduling it so that it's 1 pole at a time. We have to obviously keep all of our infrastructure open, so there's no issue with
So
backfeeding.
it's none of our infrastructure. It's
Nope, it's entirely, it's all the way out on Old Orchard. So it's as nothing before. The other outage was actually redoing the metering interconnection
Yeah.
between us and Delmarva. This is at 100% on the Delmarva side, and it's because of the Old Orchard realignment. DelDOT's project.
And that outage where we replaced the breaker and the metering, we had to go out and rent generators for SPI Pharma, so we didn't disrupt their service. In this case here, one of the discussions we're going to have is this isn't in our system.
Yeah.
And so the only thing I can say is stay tuned. More news at 11.
I'll end on a good note. Sharon, Chris, anything? Kim?
All right, guys, I got some reports this month. Guys, ready for them? So we're gonna start out with the June revenues and expenditures. I'm just gonna hit some of the notes on here that I shared with you guys. On line 12, the clean Delaware invoices. When Inframark was talking about that in June, how they hardly use them. They really hardly ever use them, and it reflected greatly by like the tune of almost $40,000. So that's great. Not so much this month, but last month, great. Line 14, I'm gonna start doing a monthly entry for the fleet clearing instead of waiting for the audit. The only one that seemed to be really negatively affected by that was the water line. So I'm gonna watch that to see if I need to do any adjustments for next quarter. We received the ARPA funds from the city, and that got split between water and sewer. That was originally going to only be sewer, but we got the amendment that we can use it for water as well. And we had a gain on our fair market value adjustment of 42,000. Overall, we had a great month. We're $150,000 over budgeted operating income, and we're almost $250,000 over the bottom line. Every utility did better than budget and the operating activities.
With all this heat, you expect it to continue that way?
Concerning what?
It's water, power and so forth. I mean, we.
That our revenues are gonna
Yes,
continue?
our rev-
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Good for us, but bad for everybody.
Yes. And then for our year to date, there was just one note I wanted to hit on there that we haven't been over and over again for the past 3 months. Line 23, there was an adjusting entry for Highland Acres payment. I put it in to get paid in March, but it didn't come out until April, so I had to do an adjustment to the fiscal year. So that's the reflection on the difference on that line. And overall, we're better than budgeted. Every department did better than budget and operating activities.
If you had a concern, what would it be?
For financials,
Yes.
impact fees worry me because they're hard to budget. And electric expenses, because we have done such a transformation of proactive versus reactive. And for our first quarter, our operating revenues overall are up $20,000 compared to last year. Our expenses, however, are up over $500,000. And that's gonna be from our purchase power coming up, and the two main ones are purchase power and Inframark plant contract. Our non-operating revenues are up $1.5 million. That's gonna be from our grant revenue of $900,000 from the city, and we only had a $33,000 fair market loss as opposed to over 700,000 from last year. So our operating income did decrease, but our bottom line did increase. And then in my other notes, after netting the investment income and market adjustments, we did actually make money on our investments. So, yeah. And our billed revenue, not counting other, is actually up almost $560,000. And most of that is coming from electric, from switching from a credit PCA to a positive PCA where it should have been.
Fed's 25% increase does.
We will see.
25.
Yeah.
Basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna go to the cash
Okay.
graphs. Like I said, over the past year, we're actually starting to make money on our investments, even including the fees. So that's the silver lining, that we might be coming back on that, and that cash reserve doesn't seem so scary, like cash reserve policy. So we're gonna keep hoping for that. All right, guys. And then our amended operations and maintenance budget. I put my notes in, what I'm changing. And if there's any strenuous objection, then I will not do it, but it's for your review. If you guys object, then obviously it's not going to change, but without any objection, that's what it will be.
What does this do to the overall reserve policy?
For our cash reserve, this is going to negatively impact because I'm increasing expenses.
I think we have 5 years to fix our reserve policy, which probably started earlier this year, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Question about the wastewater.
Okay.
Plant, yes. That you're lowering the proposed.
The revenue other.
Yeah,
So a lot of that money comes from G&B invoices, from what we're billing the developers, what we get billed, and then we bill out to them,
okay,
get reimbursed. And they're doing less sewer work, or it's not being specifically labeled that it's sewer. So it's
Mhm.
just getting split between all the utilities that they're hooking up to.
thank you.
Any other questions for Kim? Thank you very much.
Good.
Moving on. So as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to move item 7 to after the executive session. So item 8, open forum, general discussion on painting the BPW pump stations. Fencing. Earl and Sumner.
What's this all about?
They're gonna get some lime and mix it with water and they're gonna go out there and.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Sumner Crosby, 558 Pilot Town Road. I'm here with Chip Davis from the Lewes Bike and Ped Advisory Committee. We've had several discussions about the bike parking, the bike corral, I guess it's called, that's right next to the pump station right there at the base of Savannah Road Bridge. And we've been talking with the Public Art Committee about ways of, one, making it more attractive, but two, more importantly, attracting more bicyclists to the facility because it's actually the best collection of bike parking spots we have in the city. And it, in our understanding, is underutilized and we'd like to attract people to use it. I reached out to Earl, I don't know what it was, a month ago, maybe, after having attended a public art committee meeting where we were talking about beautifying this thing and attracting people. And there was a long discussion about public murals. And I got to thinking, well, there's this great big wall there. It's not the smoothest wall in the world because it's got a sort of a stepped surface to it,
Facing Savannah,
facing Gill's Neck.
doesn't it?
And I was thinking, maybe it's a possibility for a mural, for a public art committee mural location. Independently, Chip and another member of the committee had met with Heidi Lowe from the public art committee and had taken her to the bike corral, and she'd come up with the same idea that it would be a great place for a mural. So before we got too far along, I just wanted to see if it's even a possibility. It's just a white brick building. Is it? Would you guys
I
be
think it's a great
interested in
idea.
exploring, making it a little more beautiful? I know later in the agenda, you're going to talk about the water tank.
Sumner, a few years ago, Warren Goldie was talking about beautifying that with, plantings, and that hasn't happened. And I know a lot goes on there that you'd have to be very careful with where we put them because we run over everything there, but you may want to talk to him too about if he's still interested in that and how he would do it. But I think it's a great idea.
So the bike ped committee was here
Yeah.
last night talking about this, and there are similar interests right now in, park benches, plantings, all these kinds of things. Who owns the land? You own that whole parcel?
Oh, yeah, everything's jointly titled,
Okay,
but the city came to us to get permission to put them there. It's like everything that we own is jointly owned. So we really paid for it. We paid for the land and it's really ours, but by law, we have to double.
I think it's a great idea. The one thing you may want to consider is pump station 4 will be demolished.
right.
So,
I brought that up. I knew that it would,
rather than putting in a permanent mural, maybe something to beautify it. And then as part of the new building, something more extensive. But I mean, I leave it up to you guys, just be aware of that.
It's probably 5 years out, like you said.
Yeah, but a mural should last longer than that.
I know that, but
right, I mean, unless we can figure out how to get it for free, it might cost us some money to do it. So that may factor into whether we do it now or whether we wait until everything's reset.
Pump station 4 is not set to be demolished. They proposed a new pump station on the beach side. Now you could put that pump station on at the pump station 4 location, but
I thought we were gonna have to upgrade pump station 4 regardless.
you have to upgrade, but expanding that wet well, I don't know if that takes that building out or not.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there's
there's
a lot of,
upgrades there.
there's a lot of unknowns. And because there's also the charcoal filter that's there, which is rather loud.
So
Would you say so, Earl?
I'd say it's loud. I would also say that I live right next to this, and I think what you guys are doing would be great.
yeah. I had you in mind, Earl, when I proposed it, but
What's his idea? Is that-
no, it was my idea, having gone to one of these public art committee meetings, and they were talking about mural spaces all over the city, and it happens to be a decent sized blank wall right now. Moving forward, how should we proceed? Who should we talk with? You know, what would you like us to do?
Just to put out there, so and it's the often overlooked part of public murals. There is a legal component. And so when you're dealing with the artist and it's their work product and they have rights to it and whatnot. And so we're going to want an agreement. We've actually done it before.
Yeah.
So we're not reinventing the wheel, but there is going to be a legal agreement aspect that needs to be prepared, reviewed, approved.
Okay, yeah, and my sense is, I doubt that our little committee will probably be the one running that. It may very well become something that the public art committee will run, that they're really built for this kind of thing. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions, any issues?
There is a lot of work that goes on there through the year. I mean,
Right.
for many reasons. So just be careful what you do there, because it might be messed up, destroyed. So
So is there a way to get a sense of, you know, what should be hands off? You know, what part of that place? I mean, can I go with one of you guys and we could just sort of sort out what's fair game and what's not?
Yeah, we can bring Inframark in too, because obviously they're there, but I can tell you that one of the situations, like back on August 15th, not that I can remember it, 2021. When the pump station was down, we actually had 2 vac trucks backed up in there. So that was kind of an oddball, but really the back right, which is the grassy area that heads out towards the canal, is probably the least used. But we can go out there and we can walk through that.
All right, perfect.
and the
Yeah.
Savannah side, if that temporary generator wasn't there, that would be visible too, wouldn't it?
Yes. Where the door is to enter the actual building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
I also think that the fence you and I talked about over by the wastewater treatment plant, I don't know whose fence that actually is.
Which one?
The one that's across on American Legion Road.
The one that was put up as
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah, I mean,
Delta.
it's what,
Oh,
10 foot, 12
The
foot tall?
fence that runs along the bike trail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a really cool.
I think that'd be
fence.
a really nice space.
Who owns that?
That would
Is it
probably
you
be
guys?
Parks and Rec,
Yeah.
state.
No, I know
Did they
it's
put
not
that in?
us. I think it's either the state or Delta.
All right,
Yeah.
well, I'll check that out. All right, thank you.
As far as I remember, still that's still in the state, isn't it?
Well, thanks. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Open forum general discussion, proposal from GMB for the construction services for Alaska Avenue. So.
it'll be Charlie and I tag team in this one. So just to give a little background, this one kind of came up about, I'm going to say maybe a month, 45 days ago. I believe it's incorporated in the discussions of what Mr. Quill's doing for his property there on the corner. I believe there was discussions with DelDOT about access to the parcel, and I believe their feedback was to have access off of the city street instead of directly off of either Savannah or Cape Henlopen Drive. And so what the discussions are had, I don't believe the city's talked about this at one of their meetings. We're kind of having this discussion first, but if the city does move forward with improving Alaska Avenue, the question for the board is whether or not we want to take on any of the utility upgrades. And what we have in there is you have a cast iron water main that goes back and serves, I believe, 2 houses, 3 houses maybe. And then there's also a sewer main, and that sewer main actually takes everything from, call it Savannah Road heading out towards the state park, including what potentially could be the state park. And so when we had the initial discussions, very preliminary with the state park, and we looked at their flow could negate having to upgrade that line to a larger size. And so the question is kind of, as we work through this is obviously the design piece of it, but should the board take on upsizing at least the piece that's in the pavement, and also tackling the water main and obviously the stormwater too. Charlie.
I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but the sewer costs, all of it, the engineering and the construction costs. I think you would want to earmark those costs so that if and when the state park comes on board and then their EDU count gets to a certain level and they're responsible for at least some portion of downstream improvements, that we have that cost identified, so they would take part in it. I think the split last time we looked at it was like, I don't know, 60-40 or 80-20. I can't remember between what the board would pay for the downstream improvements and what the with the state park plan paying the
Is
greatest
that
portion.
pipe, is it needed to be upsized if the park comes in?
Yes,
It has.
yeah, would be the whole reason
Yeah,
for doing it.
okay.
Yeah. It's
And this,
8-inch now, terracotta pipe, it would be 10-inch,
this is a really old pipe
really old.
and it goes through the wetlands too, isn't there wetlands? in it?
Yeah, so this project would only include like 140, 150 feet of what would be part of the city's project. We'd stick a new manhole there and tie it into what's existing. Yes, it goes through the wetlands and eventually discharges to pump station 8.
So that's terracotta going through wetlands. Does that seems to be questionable. What's the condition that would be now?
Yeah, I mean, I
Is
don't
everything-
know what the condition is, but it could be. Hasn't given us any problem thus far.
There's no symptoms of high I there at
No,
that point, because
no.
Well, how would we know if there was high iron on
Well,
there?
we know
Upstairs.
there's
8.
Yeah, we know there's high I generally across the
Yeah.
whole beach side.
Right, but I mean, whether it's from that one,
yeah,
I mean, I agree with you, it's terracotta pipe on the wetlands, but
Yeah, I mean, the way, we're getting into the weeds, but the way you would test that is put some kind of, portable flow meter downstream and see what happens during a big rainstorm event.
so Austin, it has been about 9 months or more since we talked with the state park. Have you heard anything new?
Nope.
Okay, we don't need to go down that path here.
I haven't heard a single thing.
And regarding the water main, I don't know what you think, but also earmark that cost because I feel like the upgrade is necessary to serve the proposed development at the corner.
What's the reason that this is being done at this point? Doesn't seem to be on the,
Yeah, it's
Property.
probably for a higher authority than me, but I know that there's some pressure because that development is under consideration that the city would improve the road to serve it.
yeah, that was my understanding, is
Yeah.
because city has to improve that road to allow that development to occur.
Yeah,
Then
they'll-
we would do our sort at the same time.
DelDOT wouldn't approve entrance permits
yeah,
from
but why
Savannah.
is the developer paying for this?
That's the city.
I don't know about the city's portion.
As I
I
understand
think
it,
that the developer should pay his fair share of the water main at least,
Yeah.
maybe even the sewer. I didn't thought about
But
that. Yeah.
the city's kind of doing that because they have to provide an entrance. Is that
Yes,
that it?
yes.
So the developer's not paying for that, the road, right?
I don't know about that. Yeah.
I mean, it's not North Bailiwick though. That's.
Yeah, I know. So
It's a good question, but it's not,
if they have to do it and they do it without us improving the sewer, then
then we have to cut the street back. a
so
little bit.
we're in a bad position.
But why is there, it doesn't seem. I don't know, chain of custody, why, if the developer wants to develop his property and DelDOT says, well, you can't, you've got to do something on an adjacent street, then why isn't that part of the developer's responsibility?
That's a good question, but does that existing 8-inch have the capacity to take the new development? Is there any need for it to be upgraded to take that?
I think you're talking about sewer.
The sewer, I'm sorry,
So-
yeah,
sewer.
the sewer, yeah.
Yeah, it could take that development.
See, so that's the thing.
It's-
It's not forcing this to happen.
The upgrade is really because of the state park going in. And they would be paying their fair share when that ever happens.
Water, I think
It's only 4-inch right now,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, we could take, his proportional amount of sewer that he takes up, but that's not gonna be very large.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about this, and obviously this is a discussion topic, and Andrew's not here to speak for the city, but the other thing is we're looking to try and schedule a joint capital projects meeting on the 22nd of this month. And we can talk about that and also some of the capital projects I have in here.
Next month.
Yes, next month. But I just wanted to throw it out there. It's not budgeted, and this was a proposal, obviously from Charlie coming to us on the design piece. You still have the construction and RPR. I don't know.
I share your concerns, but
And why would it be, what's the rationale for, it if it does go forward, what looks like a 50-50 split as opposed to some other proportion? Is there,
On the engineering
and
fees,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, is that setting a precedent or, okay, all the costs are gonna go 50-50 and
No,
we're
no.
getting roped into something?
I broke it down by hours for the design related. It just happened to come out at 50-50. And when you go to construction, it'll be roughly 50% of the RPR is in there of each.
So I mean, yeah, the 50% is because half of it is going to design the road and half of it is going to design our infrastructure. Is that correct?
Yes,
And that was the way I read it.
yeah.
And
I think Mr. Nichols was asking, just making sure that it's not gonna be 50-50 on every project. It just happened, it's a small project. It just happened to work out that way on this one.
And you don't have to act on it. We can just discuss it, and then obviously we have another meeting. We just wanted to put it in front of you for discussion, obviously, because it's
But-
like,
I haven't shared this with you, but I know we talked on Monday about what I put together a construction cost estimate.
I have it circled in here to.
So it's 219,000 on the board side for the entire project, including engineering. So I think through construction, the engineering fees were 55 or 53.5. And then construction costs above that gets it to 219.
Just to ask a silly question, is there any stormwater?
So as part of the city's project, it will be a porous asphalt street with a small swale. And that would be the stormwater management. So there's no drainage pipe. That said, we're all aware, I know you especially, Mr. Webb, of the gigantic ponding problem in front of the Dairy Queen.
Are you saying I go to the Dairy Queen? a lot?
I know you do. But anyway.
I would be guilty of that, by the way.
DelDOT is looking to address that. They've got preliminary plans that would install catch basins on that side and run it through a pipe into the Alaska Avenue right away, which would be captured by the swale that the city would pay for their work. And eventually discharged to the wetlands way back behind American Legion Road and Alaska Avenue.
so if we put this in anticipation of the park and they come in, would we have the right to get compensated retroactively? I would think
I
so.
would think, yeah.
Be in the agreement.
So we have a chance of recovering some of it.
I think it's a good question. I think that there, and it may be worth, taking the time to get the answers before the board is prepared,
Yeah,
prepared to vote. But I think one of the big questions is, I think what you're asking, Richard, which I have the same question, is, what makes this in the hierarchy of capital improvements needing to get elevated in the hierarchy? And I think what it sounds like is if the city's going in and doing road improvements, there's efficiencies in timing for us to do our improvements then. So as opposed to them doing the road improvements and us coming later to do utility improvements, you do the utility improvements now. But if the utility improvements are driven by the developer needs to pay for those. That's the policy. If they're not, and it's just an issue of the road work is happening now, which is why the utility work is happening now as opposed to later. That I think is what it sounds like, but I think it's important to get that clarification.
But
for
it
the
felt like
board knows.
overall, that's a good piece of pipe to replace at some point because it's pretty.
Yeah.
Iffy.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the cost now versus the cost later. And the cost later would require us to rip the road out and replace it.
Agreed, but wasn't clear, and I think what Richard was asking was to make sure that what is driving it? Is it a situation that you're in there? And that's why it costs now versus later, and it's not the development on the utility end, or what's driving that
I think Austin
on
answered
that? So I think you have to get that answer and clarification before the board votes. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yeah.
Yes, but also if this proposed project of upgrading the Alaska Avenue street for whatever reason, if that didn't exist, would we be choosing to upgrade the utilities that are in that street at this point?
When the state park came along, would be when we would do it.
Yeah, it's
Right.
kind of like what Mike
Okay.
said with efficiencies.
Yeah.
That's,
So I don't know whether we're being kind of pulled into something that is being driven by some hidden.
And I think the question, Richard, for the board is whether, I think the answer is it's coming before you because they're doing the road work. But the question for the board is do you say, we're not ready to do it? We'll deal with that later, recognizing then you're going to have to tear up the road and incur a greater cost. Or you say, no, we're going to upgrade the infrastructure now because they're doing the road work now. So I think the question is being driven by the road work. And the question for the board is whether you take that opportunity to do it all now, or you say, no, we're not ready, and then you deal with it later.
Charles, do you have any idea how old that pipe is?
Yeah, that's from the 40s, late 40s, early 50s. So we've got drawings from it. It was,
So you said the utility project would be 200,000.
219
19,
total project, including engineering.
and the street project would be equivalent.
The street projects, roughly the same. Maybe they're like my 205, maybe. Yeah.
It's so if we do it now, it's gonna cost us 200,000. And if we do it later, it's probably gonna cost us 350,000.
if you're replacing with porous asphalt.
Yeah.
Actually,
If we did it now, couldn't we just do the utilities and restore what exists?
Yeah, Richard's basically saying if we were to do that project today in today's current state, you would replace essentially in kind. If you replaced in kind, it's millings. Versus in the future, now you're dealing with porous asphalt and
the subgrade
Yeah.
and everything else is being done.
But the utilities would be in.
Right.
Yeah.
Already.
That's a question for the city, isn't it?
What's the question?
If you only put millings back for the road itself, and that's a question for the city. If maybe I misunderstood.
Well, where I'm a little confused at is that we're not paying for the road though. With this current proposal, we would pay the $200,000 for the utilities and the city would pay the $200,000 for the road.
Maybe,
But if we did it 5 years from now or 3 years from now, when the state park is, and the city's already put the road in, we would then pay 350,000, 400,000.
I got that part.
Okay.
Okay,
But how much,
I-
I'm sorry, how much of that would be impact fees that we would collect from the state?
I mean, that's still being negotiated at this point, and that's why I was asking Austin, because we haven't met with them in,
you're talking about the state park.
Yeah, and
6
also from the developer, if that property on the corner there gets developed.
That's all, the impact fees are spelled out in the development agreement, but the impact fees are based off the time of service.
but just
Yeah.
to clarify, I think the question is, are the utilities being upsized relative to the development?
Yes.
And I think the answer is no. If the upsize would be relative to planning for the state park, if anything happened with that. But that the utilities that are there now are old and need to be replaced in kind. but they're of a size that would handle the development. So the utilities are not being upsized. That's what I'm hearing.
Other than the water.
The water,
Water would.
yeah.
I think for fire marshal.
Okay.
It's only 4 inch now, so we need to be 8 inch because we're gonna require sprinklers.
Well, that's pretty damn old pipe. And, you know, how much longer does it have? And, you know, terracotta doesn't change.
I think Mike's absolutely right. You gotta clarify if anybody upstream, downstream is gonna pay for their fair share, because this is a situation that's actually, if you can clarify that they will pay for that for their portion of the utility work, this is a situation where it's actually a little better for the
They
board.
being the park.
The park, the developer.
Yeah.
Those, yeah, that's probably it, yeah.
I think that the board needs to get that information to be then able to make a decision. It doesn't mean it doesn't make sense, but I think understanding what that decision, how that breakdown is, and especially if it is being upsized, even on the water to benefit the development, then that needs to be captured. So I think getting that clarification.
Yeah, and our last meeting with the state park was for October 2022.
I'm floss.
Do you want me to nudge them? You can do it. All right.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Open forum, general discussion on selling retired bucket truck.
Yeah, so we have a lot of older equipment that we're going through and replacing. This unit is actually a 1995 GMC Versalift. It's a 40-foot bucket truck. Rec came to me and said that, you know, it's pretty much taking up a garage space and it doesn't have too much of a use. The bucket needs fiberglass repair. The hydraulic lines are all rotted. The coating's all rotted. They're leaking. The frame, obviously being in the salt air, has rust on it. And so as part of our policies, anything over 5,000 is considered the surplus equipment. And so what staff's recommendation is actually to list it, you know, possibly on our website. We do have people that are interested in it, but basically setting a reserve. And we looked up comps. Comps range from like 6,000 to 14,000. 14,000 was like brand new painted, brand new wheels, brand new tires. Everything looked in working condition. The low end 6 was similar to what we have here. We thought about setting a reserve somewhere on the lower end of that.
Is there a website for municipalities to list, to auction off their surplus equipment? I know in Pennsylvania there was, but there is, but I don't know if Delaware has that.
I would have to look into it. I don't know if we've ever done it. We just have to, the way that the policy is written, it has to be sold as is. So
Right.
obviously we have to look into that, but we can. We were just looking at, you know, the ability to release the equipment and setting a reserve towards the low end, 7,000 or so.
I know there is a Delaware government selling site. I don't know if we would qualify for it or not, but I know there is one.
What's the advantage of that for us? I mean, it seems to me put it in the open market, you get many more bidders.
Yeah, potentially more
Potentially,
bidders.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I don't
place
know.
that people would go to look for surplus equipment rather than looking to see what Lewes is trying to
But then
sell.
there might be like a
Is there a
consignment fee
commission on it?
and
Yeah.
stuff like
I
that.
mean, this
so.
isn't exactly a
Yeah.
earth shattering piece of. I mean,
I think the committee for art could use a big bucket truck. 14,000.
You can pay
And we'll
any
fill it
color
up
you
with
want.
gas.
Yeah.
well, I got a question. Austin, how much? Is this truck as old as you?
Ooh.
No.
Ooh.
I would have been 2 years old when this truck was manufactured. Showing my age.
So can we sell Austin on the website also? Now, press, we'd have to pay someone. Anyway,
I
I'm
was
sorry.
born a little before that, yeah.
So this is
I digress.
just my board vote.
All right, so would
So I believe there has to be a motion.
Right, but are we going to do that or are we going to request more information?
So per the policy, the board has to approve of disposing surplus property. So that's the first question. You can do all in one motion, but the first question is authorizing staff to dispose of the surplus property valued at greater than $5,000. Second question is whether there's any method that's specified. So what the policy says is if the board says you can go forward, you are able to do it via quotations. Anybody know what that means, by the way? Quotation, auction, in person or via internet or other method. So right now you're authorized quotation, auction, and if there's another method, you would so direct. So what you could do is motion to authorize staff to proceed with disposing of the bucket truck via auction and placing, exploring the if there's the municipal site. So you could do it that way if you so chose.
Someone would like to make a motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we approve what do we approve? The disposal of the excess bucket truck via auction and exploring listing on a municipal website if there is one.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Open forum, general discussion on an agreement between Delaware Electric Co-op and to adjust the CPCN for Mitchell's Corner. I think everyone is aware that we've been in discussions with the Delaware Electric Co-op. Because right now the dividing line from Mitchell's Corner kind of goes diagonally through the property. And it would make no sense. So if we get the point, Austin?
Yeah, so the parcel is actually what is known and what is going through the county is Mitchell's Corner, the residential piece. And so the discussion was, as part of that, the developer reached out to both us and Delaware Electric Co-op to come up with a solution for the line actually physically going through the center of the parcel, splitting the residential area into two basically sections, one being Board of Public Works and one being Delaware Electric Co-op. And so this agreement is actually to amend that line. And it's basically an agreement of sale for that.
Yeah, and just adding, so the technical process is that both entities, the Board of Public Works and the co-op, have to formally agree to adjust your electric service boundary. And that's what this agreement does. It has both parties agreeing per the terms of the agreement to adjust the boundary. Once both parties have signed this, then the next step is to file a revised map with the PSC. And then the PSC has to technically approve that revised map. And the board should receive the agreement and the exhibit. And what the exhibit is effectively doing is right now, as it pertains to the Mitchell Farm parcel, that residential service is all going to be in the co-op. Everything else remains the same. So it's just the residential portion is going to be served by the co-op. So again, the action in front of the board is approval of the agreement as distributed, which would then set in motion the steps for the PSC. One note, the co-op is compensating the board $300,000 for this revision in the map. That money is to be paid and held in escrow pending approval by the PSC.
Question I had, and I know this just deals with electric, but will the property be split in terms of sewer and water?
Sewer is provided by Sussex County.
Yeah, I
Water
saw
is
that.
undesignated CPCN currently,
We are? Or-
undesignated on the water. So it's basically a choice between Tidewater. The property owner has the ability to petition one or the other.
Do I make a
Right.
motion? We
Well,
approve the
I think it'd be
resolution?
good to explain the rationale, why we're doing this. Why are we giving up a piece of this? I mean, it doesn't sound good, but there's rationale behind it.
So there's a couple things. One is we serve the Cape Henlopen Medical Center now with three-phase service, and they're putting the plan was the adjacent parcel, which they subdivided out, which is going to be another looks to be medical facility, can easily be served by the infrastructure that's already over there. And then the question of the residential piece came up. Delaware Electric Co-op actually had infrastructure over there on the opposite side of the Cape Henlopen Medical Facility already. And so when we did our math to basically look at it from a revenue perspective, which that's how we came up with that number, but it's not saying that it's never been done, but it just didn't make conducive sense to have a line literally split several parcels from one side to the other, because the development doesn't actually split it by the line. I mean, development's being built and you would have a line that went through, 10 different homes.
And essentially what you would have is if you didn't adjust the service line territory, you'd have a portion of the community served electric by the BPW, and then what looks to be 2/3 served by the co-op.
Yes.
Then you'd have several houses where the front was served by co-op and the back was served by BPW. So they have redundant power supplies. So, we have a motion to, let's see here.
Resolution.
Well, actually, yeah,
A motion to approve the agreement.
The agreement. Okay.
I make a motion to approve the agreement.
I'll
second.
oh,
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. 5-0. Open forum, general discussion on a resolution to submit the application for the water CPCN for Capes Cove. Austin and Mike.
So just the background, obviously, we are working with the state on a project to provide water and sewer service to the Capes Cove development. And as part of that, Capes Cove has an undesignated CPCN. And so we're going through the steps to actually acquire that CPCN with the Public Service Commission. And so this is one of the steps when we put the application into the Public Service Commission to receive that designation.
And just additional, so as the board is aware, since the charter change, anytime that you are to extend utilities to property outside of the city of Lewes, you need prior written consent from mayor and city council. My understanding is that they have discussed this and issued their consent. So then this is a first step on the board's end where you officially and formally begin the CPCN process. So after this occurs, after you approve this, then there's a notice that goes out, then there's an application to the PSC, and there's a formal process that's followed. But per the recent charter change, the order of operations is mayor and city council, prior consent, then you take up a resolution, then it goes to PSC. First step has occurred, ball's in your court on this second piece.
So I think the first motion is we need to be read by title only.
Correct, because it's a resolution.
So the motion to be read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mike?
Present members of the board, resolution number 23-004, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes to extend the Board of Public Works service area for water utility operations. Mr. President, members of the board, resolution 23-004 has been read by title only and placed before the board for its consideration and adoption.
Do you have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Heard?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0. Open forum, general discussion on a resolution to submit an application for a water CPCN for the Lewes Auto Body shop.
So background on this one, the Lewes Auto Body is actually the adjacent parcel to Capes Cove to the left of it if you're facing it. And so again, this is the same process. The only caveat we would add is that this one would have to have the prior written consent of mayor and city council. So it would be pending prior written consent of mayor and city council.
And the nuance here, and Austin and I had talked about this a little bit earlier. So this property had previously signed a pre-annexation agreement. However, since the change in the charter, you do still need prior written consent of mayor and city council. So even though there is a pre-annexation agreement on file, we do need mayor and city council to take that step of prior written consent. So the board can act on this if you so chose. And what you could do is you could say conditioned on mayor and city council approving and offering their prior written consent. And that would then be the trigger to go to the PSC. So this one is out of order a little bit, but you can still do it with that condition.
Is this the one where we upsize the pipes going into the brewery? Knowing that eventually this guy would come on?
No,
You sure?
yes,
Okay.
that's no, oh my gosh, auto gallery. Yeah. that's
Okay,
what
yeah,
it's-
yep, that's it. You're right. Got my autos mixed up.
Yeah, all they had,
Savannah Road, New Britain.
yeah, all they had was it was a E1 stub so that they could connect.
Is there sewer service out there? Will they be asking for sewer service as well?
Lewes Auto Body?
Yeah,
So the idea would be the Capes Cove project would go in and it would stop and the Lewes Auto Body would have to put the infrastructure in to connect to it. It's literally the parcel next door,
This is, how about sewer?
both water and sewer.
Is this just water?
Sewer, we already have the service territory.
Oh,
No, that's a very, very good point. So the CPCN, the reason it's only the species because we don't hold the CPCN for the water, but this is in the BPW service territory for sewer.
sewer.
do,
And are they asking to hook up to the sewer? That was
Both.
my question.
Both.
Auto Body and Capes Cove both. Yes.
what are they on septic now?
Yes.
So they don't have any hazardous waste or anything, I guess, that would go into the sewer if they have a septic system presently, unless they're hauling it away.
That's a good question, oil.
I believe that did come up in conversation, Charlie, and I thought he said he hauls. Yeah, it's been a while.
We'll have to look at that.
Yeah, that's something I'd worry about. Yeah.
Great point, great point.
Okay, so we have a motion to be read by title only.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Mr. President, members of the board, resolution number 23-005, a resolution of the Board of Directors, of the Board of Public Works of the City of Lewes to extend the Board Public Works service area for water utility operations. Mr. President, members of the board, resolution number 23-005 has been read by title only and placed before the board for its consideration and adoption.
Now, do we have a motion to approve the resolution contingent upon mayor and city council providing their consent?
And should we also have a look at what you were talking about, press, to make sure that they're actually hauling the way they should?
My recommendation is no, this is just the CPCN for water, but I do think staff should look into the sewer piece, but that's separate from this.
So moved.
second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, old business. Robin, cross connection.
Like, could you move Jerry Terrace? While he's doing that, while he's getting Jerry airs on. What you have in the packet was a revised, or the latest version of the draft, cross connection control plan. I've been working with Jerry from HydroCorp, who'll be coming on, and Bill Haig, who's in the back of the room from, Delaware Water Association, incorporating some revisions into the original document that the board reviewed several months ago. Also, this is somewhat of a new form document from HydroCorp, so the document basically is the same as it was before. There are some formatting issues and some changes and some language changes that was done from slightly different from the original, but overall the same content. It's all done. Press provided some comments to me after the board's first review, and we've worked to try to put some in the document. We're going to need to have further discussion on a couple of those, but I'll let Press comment on some of them as we go.
Go ahead.
We go.
Barbara and I met on Monday. This was Barbara's first opportunity to look at the document, so we had some discussion and she had some very good comments that I've wrote down, and we're going to try to incorporate it in plan also. The revised document has been forwarded to Pete from Mike's office, asking him to do a further review on the updates. Just waiting on those comments. As you see in the revised documents, Pete did prepare a draft resolution that's needed for the adoption of the plan. It's in the document also. It wasn't in the original one because Pete was working on that. Just generally, there's some sample letters in there. That was a couple questions been brought up about them. They are just examples of types of letters that are going to be sent out to the residents as we move forwards in the process. They're definitely, they got a lot of work to do, will be revised. So staff will be revising them. If the board has any comments, on what their thoughts are, but overall, they're just examples right now, so they're not set in stone. As I said, Jerry is, I think, on board and Bill is in the back. Jerry can answer any questions as far as HydroCorp's being involved in this project, what they're going to be giving us. Bill is certified testing, doing inspections and stuff, so he can give us some insight on how that's going to work from that end, if there's any questions on the board. At this point, again, if you have any more comments, this is a draft document. Like to get them incorporated in the plan and hopefully in the next month or so, get a finalized version so we can approve, because this has to be approved by state regulations, February 2024.
Bring up.
Yeah, can you talk about, yeah.
Yeah, most of the things are easy. Just keeps talking about the authority. And
I had the
what's
same.
the authority? There's a few things that aren't defined. So most of it's clerical. It's not. But the thing that concerns me is, and it reflects on the mitigation committee we had. The main thing they require for like spray irrigation facilities, irrigation of your lawn, is an air brake. And what are we going to do about that with sea level rise in areas that flood frequently? Obviously, if that goes underwater, the whole system breaks down, protecting the backflow. The double check valve wouldn't have that problem, but that's not recommended for residential type installations for irrigation and so forth. So, and the way it's discussed now, that has to be above the highest place of usage in your system. Now, like I have drip irrigation on my top floor for some plants. I mean, does that apply to that? So there's some things like that still concern me. And I haven't got an answer about what they do about the sea level rise or things in low areas.
I thought there was still a question tied to that of the vacuum breakers.
Yeah.
On bib stops and stuff, which are even
More
with
frequent.
current flood elevations, we have,
Well, any place where there's an air gap
yeah,
system.
so that they would be below water.
And
that's outside of our jurisdiction.
I understand that you looked at Rehoboth. There has to be an answer to that, because a lot of low-lying communities, I'm sure, are doing this. So what is the answer to that? I haven't gotten a clear answer on that yet. And I think it's important going forward. Before we put this into action, are we going to allow them to go in the beach areas and other low areas that are prone to flooding or sea level rise?
I think, and then maybe Jerry could jump in, or Bill, again, we had this discussion.
Yeah.
Maybe possibly looking around at other municipalities to see what they do. And one of the things was brought up about Florida, how they do, because they're really susceptible to flooding. Rehoboth, looking at their plan, they didn't address that at all. They left it the way it was, basically the same wording in our plan is in their plan. So that wasn't addressed. Again, they've not approved their plan yet. It just went before the Board of Commissioners last month. There was no discussion on that I'm aware of at their meeting. I listened to their meeting.
You may want to do Bethany or South Bethany because of the canals.
Well,
Because I think South Bethany.
I understand they're used in places like Florida, so there has to be an answer to that.
The biggest thing right now, there's not a lot of communities in Delaware that have adopted this plan yet. So there's nothing really to look at.
Mhm.
There are several, Newcastle counties had one for years. They're revising theirs, I think. I think Frederica's done one, but theirs is just like 3 pages, I think. It's very minor.
I think Tidewater did theirs too. Yeah.
And Bill, do you know if that was that, I mean, I don't know how much you know of their plan. I mean, maybe Jerry knows.
Unfortunately, I don't. I wasn't involved in the creation of the plan for them.
No, I don't know much about Tidewater's plan. And speaking with some plumbers on that. I think Jerry and I talked about it earlier. Basically, it's kind of gotta go by the plan, what it says. So,
So why aren't double checks allowed?
because they're low hazard and the irrigation is considered high hazard, a health hazard. And basically, because a double check does not show if something failed, there's nowhere for the water to come out, basically.
It seems like in a case like this, there's a bigger danger of, particularly in the future with sea level rise, of these things failing.
Yeah, I talked to a couple plumbers and inspectors, and then basically you can't. The answer I got was, you gotta go by the code. So there was no, basically the code doesn't try to predict things, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, even without sea level rise,
We get a lot of flooding. I mean, I got
We have a-
flooding in my house.
right, I mean, so even taking that off the table, it doesn't seem like the plan really accomplishes what all the effort that's going into it. Because one of the issues is that, while hose bibs are required to have vacuum breakers on them, if you leave the valve open and the hose, and then you get a break somewhere, you're now siphoning backwards, and that thing does nothing.
I mean, just to give you an example of the flooding, it can be, I live in Greenwood, we flooded 2 weeks ago, we had 4 foot of water. That's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
rare,
yeah.
no, so you can't always predict.
It's not so rare here, so,
I
yeah.
understand.
You guys got hammered with water.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
Well, and just look what happened up in Vermont, New Hampshire, though, and it's contaminated water because it's oil tanks and everything else that you're then feeding back into the system. I don't know what the answer is, but it's certainly,
And even to raise where you don't have a problem, even to raise the break above the highest use seems awkward because, again, if you have things on the porch.
Well, in that instance, you would use an RP or reduced pressure principal assembly, because it can have the back pressure on it.
Right.
And it can still be down low.
That's really all I have, other than I can give Robin this with my comments.
so, do we have to take action on this now, or are we gonna wait till?
Yeah, this,
Yeah, I'd say because like I said, Chris does have some comments that we need to, and I need to look at Barbara's comments and try to incorporate them in the plan. I was just hoping if maybe in the next week, if any other members have any additional comments, that way I incorporate them back in, maybe continue to work with Jerry and Bill. Maybe I try to find out from other municipalities to see, what their concerns are, if there's anything that can address that issue with the floodplain.
because this all has to be implemented by 2024.
And my only comments were really going back to the same ones I made about the original document. I mean, formatting changes to other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Yeah, most of it overall right now, I think at this point there's a lot of things that just minor changes need to be made, but the big thing I think is, like you said, about the
There is I forget what it's about now, that it says they'll do it as soon as possible.
Yes.
Is that something you can put in a regulation, and should that be defined?
Yeah, in one of the sections, it talks about the painting, I think coating of the lines,
Or something like,
pipe identification. It says identification must be completed as reasonably possible, as soon as reasonably possible. I think we want to put in probably a 60-day.
yeah, you might want to define that with
Yeah.
definitions.
Correct. Or just put in an actual, instead of remove reasonably possible and just add 60 days. That way you give them some time. And I don't know, maybe you also put in there and maybe can ask for an extension if there's a problem. So we're not just after 60 days shutting our water off. But I can add some sort of time frame on there and present it to the board.
When I was reviewing it, we had a good discussion and I learned a lot. But one thing that came up in the document was how long we keep records. And I've looked in our policy book to see if we have a record retention policy, and I couldn't find one. So, for this one, do we want to keep it longer than state mandated, but more generally, is this something that we should have we should have a records retention policy so we know when to purge and what things we may want to keep longer than the statute requires. And I would look to Mike for some guidance on that, I guess. Yeah.
It's the will of the board. I mean, I don't know what the baseline is. We can look into that for sure. But if the board wanted to include a policy, you can amend the policies to include a policy.
There's no statewide, like things like minutes that are obviously you want to retain.
I'd have to double check. I don't know as I sit here at the table.
It's split. I think you have the employment records, and then you also have the state mandated records, which I believe we follow those. So, yeah.
I
From the
would
state
just
side,
caution
not
about
from-
keeping records longer than mandated by a government entity.
Mhm.
In GE, that was bad juju. Keeping records longer than you have to just open yourself up.
In this document right here, it's 3.8 that talks about record keeping and data management software. All data obtained from the inspection forms, blah, blah, blah. What we put in, input into the data management system and held no less than 10 years. That's what's currently written in the document.
Yeah, so no less than, but.
Yeah.
Is it 10 years and 2 days, or is it, yeah. When you get the next report that explains that they actually did what they were supposed to.
Sorry.
Just a point.
You can come up to the mic and identify yourself, please.
I'm on down.
Like we don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Rick Moore. Just a point on records retention. I would observe that as a government entity, your obligation is more to the public on prolonged records retention rather than protecting the entity. In a private entity, you have different concerns. Having gone to business school, I can tell you, I don't like the private entity way of doing business because they're not protecting the public. In this instance, I would urge you to keep the record as long as possible for the best public protection. I also was responsible for records retention in my agency in government. And we never actually filled out the policy. So under federal law, you were required to keep it forever until you fill out a policy. But that's to protect the public.
There's your benchmark.
Well, I'll tell you, 10 CFR 50, 10 CFR had a record retention policy in it. And frankly, our policy was once a year, you'd go back and look. So if it was a 7-year retention, it could be kept as long as 8 years, or till the plant was decommissioned.
So at this point, if the members would just kind of look it over again, if you have any more as soon as possible. Just give me some comments and then we can hopefully keep this moving forwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Gary, thank you.
Hey, no problem, if you can hear me.
Open forum, general discussion on capital budgets reflecting the water main assessment. This is GMB in Austin.
So we, like I said previously, so Anne Marie, Ellen Rain, myself and Robin sat down. We kind of took all of our capital projects, looked at the city's street projects that they're looking at for the next couple of years. And what we did is we identified a couple areas where there was a lot of similarities that we could kind of focus in and hone in on. And what we did is based off the last meeting, I put together some brief descriptions of kind of, what all was entailed with GMB's water main assessment. And my task was to come back with a more narrowed list. And so what we did was we came up with 4th Street. Obviously, the city already is having discussions about having a project related to 4th Street. This would expand that, and the limits would go from Savannah Road all the way to Burton. And it would stub in the water main at each intersection, right? And then that would give you the benchmark to look down Park, DuPont, Painter, Burton, and then we can assess what everything looks like, and we can kind of benchmark ourselves for where we're going to do it. Same thing with Powhatan Road that we did. It's an older main. We think based off what we have records retention wise, ductile iron up till Park. And so what we have to do is identify if that ductile iron is in good shape. If it's cement lined, there's a good chance that cement lined ductile is great pipe. It'll last for a very long time. And so we have to look at that. So the pricing that's included in here is, and I talked with Charlie and he provided me some, is more of a worst case scenario. We went with, we're going to have to replace all instead of being able to utilize ductile should we need it. But what we did is we focused in on 3rd Street, similar to 4th Street. So you got 4th Street, 3rd Street, your big corridors heading kind of out towards Powhatan Road and that side of town. And then also the Monroe and Railroad, which has been on the city's street projects for a year or two now. And then also Manila. Now, all of this is temporary in the fact that I'm coming to you guys saying that this is, staff met between the two organizations and this is kind of the plan we had. This led to further discussion, which was having a joint capital projects meeting where both entities were in the same room and we kind of hashed this all out to see if they do align. So that's scheduled for later next month, but we wanted to get something in front of you so you could see it, get some hard numbers in front of you. You look at the bottom line across all utilities and you're looking at $37 million. That's a big chunk of change. But know that, this is us following strategic plan from back in 2019, where we focused in on water quality, a lot of money being invested in the water system, the canal crossing, the water tower. We did Powhatan Road, doing the common header project, but we're also coupling all of the ones that we're looking at, the ones I just named. We're also looking at stormwater and we're also looking at sewer. And so we try to put everything together so you could see it from a package level. You don't need to do anything on it. We wanted to get it in front of you. We can discuss it after we have the meeting with the city and we talk about the joint projects. I can adjust it at any point in time and come back to you just like a normal O&M budget. I'm trying to think of the other piece I was going to mention. And then I also have the 10-year, which I provided, which obviously looks at, a much larger holistic. And one of the things is we've been focusing a lot on in DelDOT right of ways. We did the Savannah Road project. We did the Powhatan project. We did the Front Street project. We did the Gills Neck project. So this is kind of transitioning more into city streets, city right of ways. And then obviously, if we see that the DuPont Painter Park area is an area of concern, just by the degradation of the pipe or the quality of the pipe, then we can actually look at moving that project and tackling that, kind of in the middle months where it's a little bit lighter, middle year where it's a little bit lighter. So it's a lot. The water main assessment that GMB did, it was good. It was a lot of information. We tried to kind of segregate it out, but I think the biggest thing is this is us trying to work with the city hand in hand to make sure that, our projects align with their projects whenever they can.
And so how does this relate to the prior 5-year budget? Is it a positive and negative?
It's more aggressive. And I think Charlie's numbers are more of a worst case scenario because it's looking at replacing everything. You know, if you have to line pipe versus replace pipe, it could have a pretty big impact. I think the biggest thing, if you want to note any large changes, is that the current way that stormwater is billed off a fixed amount, and there's no impact fees associated with it. So when you look at stormwater as a utility and you see Kim's monthly and yearly totals, and then you look at your capital investment on stormwater, you're talking about $2.8 million over the course of the next 5 years. Pretty large capital dollars.
And just to preface that, I've been working on stormwater projections. Even if we keep increasing rates at least another quarter to 50 cents every year past the already resolution that's signed, we're still going to be like $800,000 short, I believe, of the budget.
But Dawn is evaluating it.
Yes, that was one of the pieces, is that we're very close. There's Dawn's information request was pretty extensive, very extensive. And so this is one of the pieces that hasn't been provided to her yet, and she knows this is coming, but we haven't given it to her yet.
So couple questions. If I look at the line service replacement, I look at some of the other things here, Monroe Water. It's for a number of years and it's always the same number. Are we putting uplift factors into this CPIU or something year over year?
So we tried to the best of our ability, but nobody can predict a COVID. So, I mean, it's in there, but if
the numbers are flat year over year for 10 years or 5 years, depending which one you look at, it would seem there's no uplift factor.
But like I'm splitting, so it's a bidded out project. So if you're bidding it out and it's a lump sum at 1.7 million, that number's theoretically not going to change because you're bidding it out as a line item. So if I bid it out in 23, 24, and it's a 3-year project, that price doesn't change.
Is that an accurate statement in reality? Or is that?
Are you talking about inflation factor?
Yes.
Yeah, these are 2023 dollars, at least these 4 that I just provided.
Right, but I think Earl's question, and I understand, is that and this is the numbers show up as 50,000, 50,000, 50,000.
Yeah.
That's merely because the whole project, as Austin just said, was bid out, and then you divvied up per year.
Lead service line's a whole different
I
animal
understand.
because
I hope I understand.
yeah, lead service line's a totally different animal because we really don't know what we're getting into yet there. So that's kind of a placeholder, but Earl theoretically is right. I mean, we're looking at it as if you bid it in 26, 27, it's a 2-year project, the amount's fixed off of that year. So we can add an uplift factor to it on top of it. It's a lot. When you're looking at 10 years down the line, it's a lot, and we change it all the time. So
I step outside of my waters a bit with a question based off of that question. Do you actually pay that in those increments? In other words, if you're budgeting per year and it's a 3-year project, are you actually paying at the end of the 3 years? Or are you paying at the beginning, or is it really split?
it's pay app. So it's usually every month is how it's set up.
Right. But so does it then break down to being roughly that equal?
Well, that's why we put it, because the theory is like Powelltown Road, it was kind of broken up into 3 years, but it was very end heavy.
Right.
So your first couple was very light, and then it comes in a lot heavier. But you don't really dictate means and methods when you bid out a contract like Donovan Smith. Donovan Smith is very, very light, and I know that's going to start. Those pay apps are going to get bigger and bigger.
But
No, that's
they
state.
don't get an inflation factor for equipment building, whatever it is. Whatever they pay.
Correct.
Matter of fact, you're paying with cheaper dollars.
If the contract does it that way.
I think where it comes in for you, where you're talking about this, where is if we don't big project.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's things in here for, 2026, 2027 start. those at least need to have some kind of a kicker.
Yeah, you should see 2030, 2031.
I don't think I'll live that long, but. But I'd be happy if we had some uplift factors on this. I think that would be important. And I realize that we're in an early stage because we're still going to meet with the city and go through these different things. But I think giving this to Dawn with those uplift factors is probably, because I know we want to get that done as quickly as possible. I'd be supportive of that.
And Dawn only looks at 5, right? Because she's, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and the one that I remember with those Earl or Austin Port, you know, the lead service line. I mean, that's kind of throwing a dart at the wall. And
So is MS4. Same. Same.
MS4 is didn't work.
Yeah.
But I mean, we should have a better, as we work through the lead service line issues, of knowing whether we're underestimating or overestimating.
So I'll touch this. I'll massage this a little bit. I also have to update Alaska Avenue based off what Charlie said today. What I'll do is I'll plan on bringing this back in August for you guys to look at. I'll also have it available when we have the joint capital projects meeting, and we'll connect with Dawn and share this as essentially like a draft document.
Okay.
And there's got to be some aspect of our reserve policy and how are we matching up against that?
Yep.
Is there anything in here, and I don't think there was, for the any material changes to the wastewater treatment plant?
It's just if I can remember.
We're seeing 6 digits, so I'm guessing not.
No, it's long range plan is on the second page and it's a 0 just because if you say it's going to cost 20 million or if you say it's going to cost 100 million, it's a big difference. So I can put it, and I can put any number you want in there, but if I give it to Dawn and you say it's going to be $100 million and then it only comes in at $20 million, if I'm Dawn, I'll
I
probably,
understand. So we're looking at it, making a material decision on the wastewater treatment plant.
yep,
So I don't know how that factors in and when that decision gets made necessarily,
yep.
but there probably needs to be math associated with it.
And we can add math in there, but we have to know kind of the benchmark of what you want. Yeah, I could put 20 million, I could put 80 million, I could put 150 million.
But I think we're smart enough to know that there's a range that's acceptable potentially,
Yes,
and we haven't made a decision. But we probably know what some of these decisions cost. My point is that it's a lot of money.
it's same thing with the Army Reserve building.
Yeah.
That's another one that's in there because we have not had any discussions on what that's gonna look like matrix wise.
Is there a timing for that? That's 5 years out or 4 years out or something.
Yeah.
I think everybody, wants to have a solution for space sooner rather than later, but I think that has some federal timeframes wrapped around it, which a year to 12 to 18 months for actual officially taking in-house title. But then we also would have, if that's the way of the board, then there's also discussion because it's going to be titled in the city's name, I believe. So then obviously, if we're going to have investment into it, we would work towards jointly title.
If they find any PFAS when they do their
Yeah.
investigation. Oh, man.
Don't go there.
Yeah.
And this will be a topic at our joint city BPW meeting.
Yeah.
Hey,
The Army
Austin.
Reserve Center.
When we present to Dawn, can we give her 3 different sewer options? And see what the rate projections are for each of them?
Yeah, we can. I'll probably end up having to talk with her about that. So that she fully understands the situation there.
Yeah, we talked about it last time we had a conversation with her.
Round up.
Round up.
Okay, anything else on the capital budget?
Good information.
John?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Sumner, go on.
Sumner Crosby, 558 Pilestown. I'm not following a lot of what you guys are talking about. but I just have to say, I've heard some of these terms before. And I'm starting to feel less settled than I was when I walked in. I've heard MS4. That's a dark cloud on the horizon. I've heard lead service lines, sounds like another dark cloud on the horizon. There's a bunch of these different things out there. To some of the points that have been raised, I'm just curious, do you guys have like a worst case scenario where do you have the perfect storm of all of these things?
Yeah, so finance committee's working very heavily on that.
Yeah, so we're doing different projections for what we think is going to happen. And then we do a worst case scenario, best case scenario that we end up getting grant money. And then we do a weighted average on each of them on the projections.
Essentially optimization.
All right, I'm calming down now. Thank you very much.
But I will say to that point, the interesting part is that if you were to go back 2 years and kind of fast forward to where we are today, you had the discussion of lead and copper, but you didn't really know where it was going to go. Now you're having the discussion about PFAS, you have the cross connection control plan, all these things are coming down very quickly. And no matter if you're a utility of 10 folks or you're a utility of 50,000 or 100,000, it's quick. And there's a funding piece to it. I mean, when you talk PFAS and you have, it identifying it and then having to treat it, you're getting in some very expensive dollars.
Well, from what it sounds like you're doing, getting ahead of the curve to the extent you can by doing the monitoring and figuring out the extent and magnitude of the problem, I think is a really good move. I thought I'd heard that earlier.
Yeah, so we're engaged with DENREC on the wellhead protection study, and then I've just had a conversation today about further discussion about the well field and anything we can do to protect it, monitoring wells. We have the saltwater intrusion plan we submitted preliminary to the state. So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of moving parts on the water side right now.
Okay. And I was trying to read between the lines on this budget thing with the city and capital coordination. I mean, I guess I just had this question about the Piletown project because that was I know you guys have talked about how expensive that was. What percentage of that project had to do with the road paving pieces of it rather than the plumbing pieces of it?
Significant.
That's what I figured. So I'm assuming it wasn't said directly, but I'm assuming part of this dialogue with the city is to try to coordinate that so that BPW isn't paying for all of the paving.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it also has to come through optics, right? You guys you're entrusting two organizations to work together and not really waste taxpayer or ratepayer money. And this is the prime example of that. We don't want to go through, do a project and essentially, raise our rates to help fund or kind of offset what the city would end up doing for street repair.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sumner.
Item 16, general discussion on design and color of the water tower.
So last month you decided on water tank blue, and there's probably 50 different shades of water tank blue. So what we decided to come back with you is as we move forward, we're not too far off from getting to a point where we're putting the bid packet together. And the last time we talked about logo, and we had the conversation about the Cape School District logo on there. There wasn't so much of a flavor. I will tell you that on Facebook recently, Driscoll Drones, who does wonderful work all over the state and Sussex County, posted the new water tower that's at Mariner Middle, I believe it's Mariner Middle, off of 24, or no, Beacon. And they did actually put the Tidewater logo on one side and the Cape School District logo on the other. Looks really good. But the discussion today was what logo do you want on there? And right now we have the block logo that has the BPW crest on one side and the Lewes crest on the other. And so what we included in the packet was basically two different ideas of putting the city crest on one side, the BPW crest, and our normal Lewes BPW across the center, is just trying to get a consensus so we can kind of include that in the bid pack. Obviously we would have a professional do it, but we would have to give them direction on what we want. So I say that right, Charlie? The tank manufacturer would have to go through that process, but we would have to give them direction on what we want.
Roughly how tall are these letters?
Pretty big.
I'm gonna say 6 feet plus.
Big. But they gotta be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is something like 60.
Don't jump at once.
I was in favor of
Well,
Cape Henlopen
just look at
last
what you
year.
have there, and that looks like. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
I mean, it almost looks like. It's Lewes BPW. The city's not, doesn't seem to be, that's the
That's the
Lewes
city. And
crest, but the words Lewes BPW sounds like it's just us that we're talking about.
well, it is, it's our water tower.
That was sort of the direction we got in the last meeting.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just the way it's laid out.
Gotcha.
I mean, I don't know how you change it, but
Do we have a
it
picture
doesn't
of
say
the
City
the
of
other tower?
Lewes.
It's up.
Let me see if I can send it to Mike, see if he can bring it up. Are you logged in under Sharon or Mike?
I see.
I see.
Let me
But
see.
while they're doing that, I mean, I still agree with Earl that I think the side of the tank that faces the high school, we should offer the school district to put the Cape logo on it. And, require them to pay for the logo. But as a community gesture, we're part of the community and it's visible
current.
directly from
I'm gonna
the
I'm
stadium.
gonna show the one that was put up by Tidewater and
I just wonder if there's enough room to just put Lewis above that and BPW above that, or vice versa, so each one's identified.
But our name is Lewes BPW.
Okay, all right.
I'm,
That's what it said now.
Mike, I sent it to you and Sharon. If one of you could log in, I don't know. if you
That
can
doesn't
or not.
identify BPW.
Oh,
No.
isn't the other side? No,
I don't think there's nothing on the other side of the tank, is there?
No, it's the same. It's block letter on both sides.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
ah,
I look at that from my office window every day, so. I'm like a mirror so I can see the backside of it.
But what I'm saying is put that up here and that identify. Unless you're happy with Lewis BPW, and it just sounds like it's we're only tuning our horn.
Put it in the city credit. I mean, I leave it up. to
Rest
you.
of the city.
Huh?
I like the top one the best, but I still like Cape Henlopen
On the other
on
side.
the other side.
if
I
they're
like the
gonna,
bottom one because it's large
ah,
and you want to be able to see it. Not just from the stadium or driving by.
But that's why I said, so if these are the same size of letters, the cursive, would that be easier to read or harder to
So
read?
there, that's Tidewater Utilities. So that's the one they just put off of 24 on Mulberry Knoll, and that's the other side.
Well, you think that on the high school side and then.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
I'm,
if they're paying for it, I guess I could go for that. I thought it was all at our expense.
What are we gonna put on? What would you like to put on there? Cape, like another cape?
I think we leave it up to the school district.
Gotta leave it up to school.
I mean,
I'm
Vikings,
not excited about it.
But, and here, and
if you
I.
go to high school there fresh, you will.
I'm just about there. Another year, I think I'm there.
No, that's the elementary school level, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, my personal opinion, I kind of like the second one. I like the cursive. I
Yeah.
think it's dressier than the block lettering, but
I can live with the top or the bottom, but I would like Cape Henlopen. I'd like us to readdress that.
I like the cursive and I could live with, oops, Rick.
We're about to get the answer.
Not an answer, just a suggestion. Why not do a simple little community survey?
I even thought about doing a.
Yeah.
Weigh in.
I was thinking exactly the same thing. This would be a wonderful thing. We gather together some community people, some with artistic talent. Who could take it on as a community project. They had a good time at it. They could bring their stuff in. We could look at it. I'm not convinced. I mean, I think it's a board decision. But when you decide on something.
I think it's a good idea, but
By committee here at the table.
Never did.
so Charlie, could we go out to bids with this? And then just do a modification afterwards? Yeah, because my only concern is that you're looking to go out for bids in September, I think.
Why? Is that important? I mean.
Yes.
Yes, we need a new water tower.
Maybe you could enlist the Cape Gazette to run a little piece and invite, the public to, if you put the current options and then ask if there are other options, but they could do it fairly quickly if you.
Well, what I was looking for was a way to actually give more time. Because the tank isn't going to be built in September. And so, if we could come up with a design, submit a design to the tank manufacturer and then let the committee, come to what the best is rather than rushing them.
Well, you can always let the bidders know. That's a little open-ended, but anyway, I was just, if you can enlist the Cape Gazette, give it broad publicity, let the public get involved, because you can come up with some good ideas there.
And I think if you could crank it up fast, the public input, we still have time to get it into the bid document. With that in mind, strength area to know how fast. Get the artist. My experience with artists is quick.
How critical is it that the tank manufacturer know what the image may be?
Yeah,
That's what I was asking.
so what they'll do is. The tank manufacturer will go to some graphic design group to actually fit whatever draft logo we give them onto the tank, because it's not just as simple as slapping it up there, because you got the curvature of the tank. It's all got to be fit in there properly so you can see it. And
the tank manufacturer would take that on and deliver it so that the tank goes up and the logo is already on it.
Well, the tank goes up, it gets painted tank white because that's blue. And then they bring in their person or company to do the logos or whatever we decide to put on the tank.
I imagine it's all computerized now.
It is.
So it's probably not.
At least the graphic design part.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
And wouldn't it come in in a roll and unroll it and it gets put up because it's designed that way? That's what signs
It was green.
Yeah, I
technology.
don't think they do that. I think they actually hand paint.
Posted.
I believe it's hand painted.
Yeah.
I watched the one there on 24,
Yeah.
and they are doing it section by section.
Yeah,
It looks-
it's hand painted.
Ah,
Which is probably gonna last a little bit longer
Yeah.
because then it'll get the coating over top of it. Rather than some like decal type thing.
yeah.
So as someone knows, I've had 2 events at my house and I've asked this question of people at the house, what they want to have on the tank. And it is wildly different from nothing to, rainbows and all kinds of stuff, unicorns, you name it.
Did anybody say silver?
Well, actually, he did.
There's the two of us.
So the question is, are there thermal aspects? Like that was why I said
Yeah.
silver, you know, can you heat up the water substantially by having some really cool scenes with a lot of dark coloring.
That's why the lighter colors are more prevalent.
Look, we gotta compete against the beach ball in Ocean City.
You know,
That's our bench.
rather than Cape Henlopen, I recommend Seaford High School logo over
Oh, yeah, I go over.
Do you want us? Go ahead.
I don't know why I said yes, but yes.
Hi, Joellen Jordan, 123 Rodney Avenue. I'm just curious, why Cape Henlopen High School?
Because if you look at where the tower is going to go
Uh-huh,
and you look at where the home stands are,
uh-huh,
it literally faces their home stands
okay.
at an angle, but it faces the
So,
home stands.
you know, the new water tower is going out on the Jones Farm that we purchased with the county and the city. And so it's directly adjacent to, and as Earl just said, you see it from the stadium.
So it's for the high school too?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just putting on my sort of branding hat because things change. And if we have Cape Henlopen, and as someone said, Seaford, I mean, are we really being inclusive?
Well, it would face the Cape Henlopen High School, so that's
Yeah,
pretty
I
inclusive.
guess I thought, certainly the Lewes and then maybe you guys, I mean, because.
Pictures of us?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what?
Done.
No.
I
Because
want to have a thinner face, though.
that would make you the tax by terrorist for gun tax. All right. Charlie?
And I already talked about it. I think it's a lot of worry about and nothing. We can get a logo in the bid documents. If it changes, it'll change it. Probably.
Be a change order.
It probably won't be that
Yeah.
big of an item, but.
You're talking about a $5.2
Yeah.
million project.
So
So
All right.
I would worry too much about it.
All right, and then the committee can have more time.
and we'll kind of brainstorm some
Sure.
ideas and we may work with the Cape Gazette. to
So,
try
Mike, this isn't really going to be a committee. It would just be.
A survey.
I would
Yeah,
just have-
I mean, there's different ways, and I think I agree. I'd let staff kind of mull it over in terms of how best. I mean, you can do something as simple as, help us consider these, give a couple options, or D, submit your own, and then it all gets submitted and you all review it. And it's, so, I mean, it could be a process, an iterative process.
So
So
there's also money that can be made. You were talking about.
I'm talking about the antennas at the top.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
about, okay,
totally
not
separate.
about any.
Yeah, because we all know cell service is great in Sussex County, so.
All right, so then the marching orders is GMB will just use one of the logos for the bid documents. And Austin and staff will look into how to get the community involved. Okay.
Good.
Thank you all. That was great.
Nice idea.
Yes.
Open forum, general discussion on the wastewater treatment plant. Long-range plan. So, we are now gonna have the next workshop on August 9th. And we haven't set the time yet. Because
Have it from?
I reserved it at 5.
you reserved it at 5. So, and the prior ones have all been at 6:30. So does anyone feel strongly one way or the other about the 5, 6:30 change? You know,
Yeah.
we always try to do it in the evening hours so that.
Right.
All right, okay, so the next workshop, then Sharon, you could put it on the calendar, August 9th at 5 PM.
It's at Rollins.
And at the Rollins Center. And what we're gonna be discussing at that point is some updates on where we are in the process. And I think the 3 or 4 high-level ones are, we're gonna get the county to provide an update. I think probably everyone's aware that there was a survey done and they found archaeological findings on the Wolf Neck site. And that is going to drastically change what was being planned for Wolf Neck. Doesn't change the plant, but the fields and the area down to the canal. So we're gonna let Sussex County provide us with, or the citizens with an update on those findings. We're gonna provide an update on where we are with developing the agreement for option 3 with the county. So we just had another discussion last week. Austin Press stood in for Earl and I with Hans and Todd to go over the framework of an agreement. And that is now in Mike Hoffman's hands. And we'll eventually get to Everett.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a process. It's, you have the high points, eventually gets put into a document, and then it's, I review it, Everett for the county, the organizations review it. And as we had mentioned before, when the document is ready for review, then it will be publicly available, and then there's a public discussion and whatnot. But as you go through the drafting process, it's a process.
What I will say is that things have gone, I think, well with the county, and part of it is due to pressure to get the wastewater treatment plant out of the floodplain. So, and once again, we'll put more. We'll present more on the 9th. And I think, as I've said at every workshop, option 3 is where we're putting the most of the effort right now. And we're keeping option 2 and option 1 as the backup, should we not be able to reach an acceptable agreement with the county. So, and then, the original scope document from GHD had an ocean outfall. And that option was, I think the technical term is ungodly expensive. It was like $150 million, if I remember, in that ballpark. But that was going out through option 2, which was our new facility, all the way piping it back and going through the state park. So the county has come up with another option for an ocean outfall, which should be drastically less expensive. And we and the county are looking at the cost impact of that and how that would alleviate the problems at the Wolf Neck site. So we'll discuss that more. And that's, and that's where we are with the wastewater treatment plant at this point.
I'm confused. I actually came because I wanted to do the 7, which was an ad hoc committee for the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, so.
And so I feel like you guys have already made the decision, and.
No, what we've said all along is that we're going to go with option 3. And if we couldn't reach an agreement with the county that was acceptable, we have option 2 to fall back on. but we weren't going to expend effort on option 2. However, we are going to cover agenda item 7 after the executive session.
Well, that's a long haul.
I'm sorry.
But.
We did not.
I guess my personal feeling has always been that you really want to think twice before you hand over to Sussex County, especially when you've been told that you would have no control over what was done.
But that's the whole point. If we can reach an agreement that gives us the oversight, control, financial aspects, and all of that. If we can't get that, then option 3 goes off the table, and then we have to go back to alternatives.
Oh, okay, and then I'll sit. I just feel like, okay, you guys are gonna say, okay, this is pretty good, now we're gonna do it. And I'm not so sure, not that I have any particular voice in it, but I think you want to really think about some of the issues that people have raised. And will we, as citizens, have anything to say about this before you guys decide, okay, this is it, or.
Well, I mean, I think, and I don't mean to sound defensive, but we've held 6 public workshops so far, and we're going to continue to hold workshops. Once we get an agreement or a draft agreement, we will have a workshop on that for the public input. And I think we really are listening. That's how we got to an alternative ocean outfall and some of these other issues. So I think what I would ask is you give us a chance, and then there's going to be plenty of time for public comment.
And I have no choice, but.
Well, but we've also been doing this for 2 years now.
I do understand.
Yeah, we're not rushing into it.
Okay, you know what I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sumner?
So the meeting will go faster without me being there on August 9th. So. I'm just
Where
going
exactly do you live, Simon?
Oh, where do I live? Somewhere down Pilottown Road. But I know, because I've attended all but the very first of the public sessions, and I really appreciate the fact that you have had these sessions. We'll continue to do them. At several of those sessions, the county has referred to some rather expensive modeling effort that it would engage in at some point in the future. And I think I look forward to what that might provide us. But I'm wondering if concurrent with that, or even before that, we not invest in some level of ambient monitoring in the canal to understand what happens, what the actual background situation is in the canal. What is the water quality of the canal? Because it might very well inform the modeling. It might very well change the way we understand what's really going on today. As I've made it clear all along, my greatest concern is the water quality of the canal, and as the water goes out. Maybe it's just that I've never really been able to get my arms around the simple numbers that are in the document in the GHD assessment. But it seems to me there would be value in some level of ambient monitoring, not monitoring of the outfall, but actually what is going on with the nutrients perhaps above the outfall, upstream and downstream. Be happy to roll up my sleeves on that if there's value in that offline, but it's just something that is becoming more and more of a question right now, because it seems to me it would be useful to connect with the modeling effort whenever that does come.
And the staff, the one issue is that, or one of the things is that if we go to an ocean outfall, then there's nothing going in the canal. And so environmentally and for the other reasons, and that's what we're trying to put together now is what what the cost is and what the environmental benefits would be.
And I applaud this, whatever it is, 3C or whatever it's being called. I think it's a
I
great
think
idea.
it's 3C subparagraph 2.
Okay, whatever it is. I look forward to seeing how that plays out, because that was something that was kicking up when we were all on that tour of Wolf Neck, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are looking at that. So will it be available via Zoom? The workshop?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And where are you going, Sumner?
I can't tell you.
Then there's, okay. Let the record show that Sumner Crosby is to be blocked from the Zoom. That was a joke.
You have Wi-Fi there?
Not really.
I don't think so.
All right. So call to the public. I went back up.
Not to make things simpler. I'd like to suggest, since this is an opportunity to raise issues not on the agenda for a future session. Some of you may be aware I serve on the Delaware Sustainable Energy Utility, and we're in the process of working on strategy. And one of the things that I think would be useful to talk about is BPW has a rather unique mission. I think there are only 2 entities in the state of Delaware that have as broad authority as you have defined. And literally, you can provide any utility to the service area of Lewes. Any utility covers an extraordinary range of things, most of which you're not currently looking at. But I think this is a period of time to look at some of the broader ecological challenges that could be incorporated into a utility. I just got appointed to my HOA board, and
Congratulations.
Condolences.
Thanks for like this. I got made treasurer, and I really need the condolences. But one of the concerns some of us have talked about is HOAs, for instance, have an array of things that really we need to be partnering with BPW, the city, and so forth to really properly address. Because there are many areas, I mean, I'll raise an example. When the noise level from people doing their lawns and so forth, why aren't we looking at making lawns more sustainable? And what has this got to do with the sustainable energy utility? Everything we do has an impact on energy, use of energy, the kind of energy, and so forth. And what we really need to be understanding is sustainable energy includes everything in our lifestyle. And we are faced now with an existential crisis as we move forward. You know, many people have said, well, I'm not going to be around when all these things happen. Well, that's becoming less and less true, and more likely that we'll all be around when some of the worst case scenarios happen, because they're going to be happening over the next couple of decades. But this is an opportunity.
If not sooner.
Yes. This is an opportunity really to look at the kind of mission. I like to refer to preservation of the future. You know, we have historic preservation. I like to think we have the future history that we need to preserve. And those are some choices that we can make as citizens and a city and as a BPW. So that's something I just like to suggest, you know, take a little thought and so forth, but to have a session on exploring some of the ways BPW can enlarge its mission to really take on the larger ecological challenges of how Lewes can move forward. And it needs to involve the city as well, because I think we need to look at the whole concept of planning very differently. Right now, we don't really have what I would call a mission and vision for the future. We have, you know, a few principles that are more limited in their scope, but we really need to be thinking. I like to say we need to think in terms of 50-year and 100-year cycles. Because that's the period of time, for instance, when you were talking about what's the age of, some of the infrastructure. We need to be planning what's going to be our infrastructure moving forward, knowing what we know about sea level rise, changes in climate, increasing ferocity of storms, and the whole shebang. I look at the maps of flooding, and where I live will be a little island in the most severe flood, completely surrounded by water because everything around me will flood. And so when you look through Lewes and you look at the impact of the things that haven't been controlled, all of the development at our perimeter, these are things that we've got to address because they're going to increase our flooding. They've created, these surfaces that are going to be pooling all the water all toward Lewes. So anyway.
And just, I have a question for you, but also you're aware that, Presley here was the chairman of our mitigation committee. And it was looking at a lot of the topics you talked about there. And, so it's now moving forward. But do you have other specific examples of things that you think we could be looking at?
Well, I'll give you a simple example. There's a proposal by a professor from UD actually to make lawns into mini national parks. I forget the guy's name, but that's it. This is a concept that could be easily adaptable to Lewes as a town. Because we've got, for instance, the Lewis and Bloom folks who are doing all this stuff with gardens, but how about making gardens that have as their centerpiece the flora that's going to be adaptable under the conditions that are coming? We've got to look at what will minimize our need to keep mowing the lawns, that will minimize the human effort involved in maintaining this stuff, that will be adaptable to the changing climate. I mean, we can see on one hand increasing drought conditions, and on the other hand, increasing flood conditions. We're moving to these extremes, and in order to really adapt properly, we've got to have the kinds of vegetation that will both be able to withstand these climate extremes, but also help out. For instance, to me, one of the sad things in losing the battle on the 4th Street development is we took out all those trees. Every single tree maintains a sink for water. And that's essential. It also cools the atmosphere. You can already feel the difference when you walk along the sections that have been developed that don't have the trees. Walk into the shade, you feel the difference. In cities all over the world now, they're looking at planting trees to lower the temperature. And lowering that temperature is essential to people's survival. I mean, we all know what's happening in places where the temperatures are rising to 90 plus, 100 plus, 110 plus. It kills people. It's killing people in large numbers. So trees, vegetation, the ground cover, roofs that are covered with living things and so forth, all help to serve to cool the planet and to keep us alive. So these are areas where BPW could actually provide expertise to the community.
And I'm on that side, but it also seems like that's not our jurisdiction. That's the city's.
Well, that's what I'm talking about.
That's what I was
Look
trying
at your
to.
charge under the state code. You can literally provide anything that's a utility. All you have to do is define it. I have the same discussion with the SEU. Nobody has defined what sustainable energy is. So we get to define it. Nobody has defined for you what a utility is. So you get to define it. A utility is anything that you provide in the public's behalf through the BPW. You already have that legal authority. The only limitation is your own imagination as to how you exercise that authority. So just throwing that out to you.
Thank you. I have to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Good night.
And also, no, I mean, we've discussed the strategic plan, as we move forward, we've kind of hit our 5-year mark. So we're kind of at that point where we need to start thinking about whether or not we just update the one that we have, whether or not we use it as a benchmark as we move forward. When we had it then, we had Spot, Stevens and McCoy come in. I think they did a fantastic job. They brought in stakeholders, they identified stakeholders, put everybody in one room. We went through the process. And we came out with a document that really led the charge over the last 5 years.
And I don't know if we've discussed it, but it is time to update the plan because it's really not a workable document anymore. We've accomplished so much. But we were going to put that off till the winter and hopefully get some of this other stuff off our plate. That's the pipe dream.
Yeah, no say. Good luck. Good luck.
All right, call to the press. No?
No.
Okay. All right, then, a motion to go into executive session?
Just one recommendation, because you do have members of the public here who would like to be here for the discussion on the one agenda item that's been moved. So what I would recommend is that you actually set a time. So you're going to enter into executive session and then, come back to open session. You can pick up on other items in executive session afterwards, but just out of respect to those who are here for the agenda item, I would
Okay,
set
so
it.
we can bifurcate the executive session?
Yes,
Okay.
you can.
So why don't that's an excellent point then. We probably don't need, 15 minutes? I'm looking for a consensus. 15 minutes, half an hour? To go,
I don't know what else, but 15 minutes sounds
yeah,
20, I don't know,
Yeah, 20.
20,
22.
23.
All right.
So
What's that? Because there are some things we have to discuss that is not suitable for public. I mean,
We do
Or
want you to
qual-
stay, though.
there are qualification issues and
not-
things like that it's not appropriate.
it's 6:50. Just do 6:50. It's 18 minutes.
15 minutes?
6:50.
Oh, 6:50.
Yeah.
Yeah.